Welcome to Everyday Linux User. In today's video, I'm running down the top 25 Linux distributions according to DistroWatch, and I'm assessing how good they are for the everyday Linux user. So this isn't just a popularity contest, which one's my favourite. This is the ones I think are most suitable for the everyday Linux user. When I first checked this list to do this video, Tuxedo is number 25, but if I look now, it's actually Alma Linux. So I'm going to do Tuxedo because I've used Tuxedo. And Alma Linux is one I'm going to do in the future. But Tuxedo is worth being on this list. It is a really good operating system. It comes with the Tuxedo range of computers, but you can download it and use it on your own laptops or computers. And it's no fuss, and it's really easy to install. All the hardware works. It's really easy to install applications. It is one of the best Linux distributions I've used in the past few years, and yes, it is entirely suitable for the everyday Linux user. Let's move on to Solus. Now, Solus is an independent distribution, originates from Ireland. It uses the Budgie desktop, which is like GNOME but customized. It's very, very pretty. It's easy to install. It comes with a reasonable set of applications. You can get the GNOME or KDE Plasma desktop if you want to. It uses its own package manager called EOPKG. It is quite heavy on resources, so it's not one if you've got an older computer. So if you've got anything in the last 5 years, it's fine. 8 gigabytes and above would be brilliant. It would run 4, but it might be a bit stuttery just because of the weight of the desktop. Installing applications, you want to get Flatpak up and running. It doesn't come with Flatpak up and running, but as soon as you get Flatpak in, it's fine. Hardware support is great. So yeah, Solus is good for the everyday Linux user. It's probably not my number one option, and that explains why it's further down the list, because other people obviously feel the same way. But it is a really usable distribution. And then we come to Mageia. Now, Mageia has been around a long time. It started off as a distribution in the 1990s called Mandrake, and then early 2000s it became Mandriva, I believe, and then Mageia was born out of that. It's an independent distribution, originates from France. It is what I consider one of the base distributions, a bit like OpenSUSE, Debian, Arch. Is one of the base distributions that other distributions model themselves on. It's not the best. Whilst it is usable for the everyday Linux user, I've never really got on with it that well. Feel free to try it in a virtual machine, but I think you will hit problems, and therefore it's not one that I can recommend for the everyday Linux user. It still needs improving. Linux Lite is a Debian based distribution. The clue's in the name, it's lightweight. So it comes with the XFCE desktop, which is lighter than GNOME or KDE. It comes with a decent set of tools to start off with. It's easy to use, familiar user interface, etc. Hardware support is fine. The main issue I have with Linux Lite is how do you get all the applications you really need, like Steam, and say you want Spotify, or say you want Visual Studio Code, or there's a whole number of applications that you'd have to go and find the PPAs for, or you need to install Flatpak. Now, it's not hard to install Flatpak, but it's one of those that a little icon on the desktop saying install Flatpak would be good. It comes with the Synaptic Package Manager as well, which is okay for installing packages, but it's not the most straightforward application to use. So Linux Lite is good if you've got an older computer, but it's not the number one choice if you've got a decent computer. And to be honest, it's probably not my number one choice, even if it's older hardware. Spark Linux, I tried this a week or two ago, and it's based on Debian. It originates from Poland, and it's lightweight. It comes with all the desktop environments, but generally you're going to be using something like XFCE. I found I had a few problems with it in a virtual machine. Specifically with hardware setup, I had a few screen glitches. Installing software wasn't completely straightforward either. Yes, there's a package manager, but it doesn't ultimately do everything you expect it to do. Again, you can install Flatpak and get it working that way. It's actually behind Linux Lite in my eyes in terms of usability, and there are better Debian-based lightweight distributions out there. So yes, you could use it as the everyday Linux user, but there are options that I currently feel are more suited. Number 20 in the list is Kali Linux. Now, Kali Linux is not for the everyday Linux user, and we're going to write it off straight away. It's a specialist distribution. It's based on Debian. It originates from Gibraltar, and generally you're going to be using, it comes with all the different desktops, but generally you'll be using XFCE. It's used for security, forensic tools, penetration testing and things like that. It's it's a script kiddies playground basically. Now, for the people that really use it for its proper uses, I'm sure it's a great distribution, but there's a lot of people out there just using it because they want to become Neo from the Matrix, and what they really end up with is a nice prison sentence. Kali Linux is not for the everyday Linux user, so we're going to dismiss that out of hand. It's just don't use it if you are a normal user and you just want to get on with your day. FreeBSD is the next on the list, and BSD is not Linux, so we're going to discount it straight away. Number 18 is NixOS. It's an independent Linux distribution from the Netherlands. I've never used this one, and there's a reason for that. It's the language used around Nix on the web page. It doesn't look like it's for the everyday Linux user. It says Nix is a tool that takes a unique approach to package management and system configuration. Learn how to make reproducible, declarative and reliable systems. And there's a lot of terminal style action going on the front page there. I don't think this is one for the everyday Linux user. It's one that I may try in one of my review videos coming up, but I don't think your new user to Linux is going to like it, and I'd imagine your everyday Linux user who's been using Linux for a while is going to like it straight away. If you're a little bit more technical, maybe this is the sort of thing you'd use, and the fact that it's high up in the list suggests that people are using it, but it's not for the everyday Linux user. Number 17, Vanilla OS. Now, Vanilla OS I tried a while ago. It's based on Debian, and its origin says global. Desktop is GNOME. So the GNOME desktop instantly adds it a bit of weight to the desktop, so it's not going to be for the older computers out there. If you've got 4 GB and above RAM, you're probably going to be okay. 4 GB is going to be your limit. You're probably going to need the better computer you've got, the better your experience will be. Now, Vanilla itself was great. I really liked using Vanilla OS. And one of the best selling points of Vanilla OS is the ability to install applications from all the other different package managers. So you can install apt packages, you can install from the Arch repository, you can install from OpenSUSE packages, Fedora, all these other different package formats. So, and they're all containerized in their own way. So it's an immutable operating system. So an immutable operating system is one where the software cannot be changed easily by its users, and so it provides extra security for you. But it makes it harder to make changes to the system. But essentially, you're going to install your applications and you're going to use them, and they're going to work perfectly fine. And the reason for using GNOME, of course, is that it's not highly customizable. It makes it very easy to support if everything sort of sticks the same. If you think about Apple, the Apple interface on Macs are not that customizable. If you think of Windows aren't that customizable. You install the software, you use the software, you get on with your day. And for the everyday Linux user, that's generally fine. So it might be one that you'd like to check out as the everyday Linux user. Worth checking out in a virtual machine first, and if you like it, maybe install it as your main operating system. But yes, a very good operating system to use. Next up is Elementary. Elementary is based on Debian and Ubuntu. It's originates from the US of A, and it uses its own desktop environment called Pantheon. It's reasonably lightweight, it's nice to use, it's got an okay set of applications, except and the hardware support's good, but it's hard to find and install other applications. You have to go to it. It heavily relies on Flatpaks, but it doesn't have like a GNOME package manager or anything like that. It's got its own package manager for installing applications, and a lot of them are paid for apps. So Elementary is trying to monetize itself by giving apps that are paid for, and then they make money that way. You can install Flatpaks, but essentially you're going to the Flatpak hub, downloading the Flatpak, and then installing it that way. You basically, there's no graphical package manager. It's an okay distribution. The monetization bit makes it a little bit. It might make it a bit confusing to the new user, because you'll go to the package manager and not find simple things like Office packages and things like that. You then have to go to Flatpak to go and get those. It's an okay once you get used to it, but not necessarily my first choice for the everyday Linux user. Number 15 is CachyOS. Now, when I reviewed this a month ago, it was down in 21, 22 position, so it's going up and up and up in the rankings. And it's based on Arch, and it originates from Germany again, and it uses the KDE Plasma desktop. Now, it's Arch based, as I mentioned, and I had a few hiccups when using it. I used it in a virtual machine, I didn't use it on bare metal, but I had a few issues setting up hardware, a few issues with screen glitches again. Bluetooth seemed to be a particular problem, as I remember it. When installing, I had a couple of crashes. What I would say about my experience of Cachy is that whilst there are other distributions like Endeavour and Manjaro and even Garuda out there, I think Cachy needs to tighten up on some of its bugs, because the idea is it's very lightweight and very responsive, and I'll give it its due, it is very responsive, but because of the little glitches it makes it difficult to recommend, because you know, if I recommend this to you, you install it on the computer and you'd go, oh, but the hardware doesn't work, my Bluetooth doesn't work, my printer doesn't work, oh, it keeps crashing. Now, saying it keeps crashing would be unfair. It doesn't keep crashing, but it did crash a few times when I was using it. So the fact that it's gone up and up and up in the rankings suggests people like it, but at the same time I had issues when I was running it. AntiX originates from Greece. It's based on Debian Stable. It's ultra lightweight, uses Fluxbox Ice Window Manager or Joe's Window Manager, and this is an operating system based for very old computers, and it is brilliant. I couldn't recommend it more if you've got a very old computer. It's really easy to install, really easy to use. Package management is fine. It's by the same people that come up with MX Linux, and it is perfect for older hardware. So if you've got really old hardware, AntiX I can highly recommend for the everyday Linux user. Number 13 is Garuda Linux. Garuda is based on Arch Linux. It originates from India. It uses a multitude of different desktop environments, but KDE being the main one, I believe. So it's rolling release based on Arch, as I mentioned. It's eye candy. It's very visual. The icon sets, the way they've set it up is very nice to look at. At the same time, it will hurt your eyes after a while if you stick to the main desktop look and feel. It's got the sort of like neon effect to it. As a distribution, it's perfectly fine. Hardware installs perfectly fine. Applications are easy to install. You've got a full set of applications available to you. It is usable as the everyday Linux user. I can highly recommend it. It's decent. The question is it better than other Arch-based distributions like Manjaro and Endeavour? And arguably, I'd say not quite at this moment in time, but it is a very decent distribution. It's worth checking out. Number 12 is KDE Neon. Now, if you want a pure KDE desktop environment look and feel, with a decent set of applications, a It's based on Ubuntu. It originates from the United Kingdom. It's easy to install packages. It is the best KDE based distribution there probably is. That's purely focused on KDE, no other desktop environments. It is really usable for the everyday Linux user. I highly recommend it. It's very, very good. Easy to install, easy to use, hardware support works, easy to install applications. You'll have no problems with KDE Neon at all. I recommend it. Because it's KDE, you probably want it on a slightly better machine, but KDE isn't overly heavy. So 4 gigabytes and above of RAM probably work. The more the better, obviously, but it's a really good distribution. Highly recommend. Number 11 is OpenSUSE. Now, OpenSUSE is one of the base distributions. It's been around for a long, long time. I first used it, I think, in the early noughties. And at the time, it was pre-Ubuntu. So at the time when it first came out, it was the ultimate experience with Linux. What I would say now is I'll go from one release to the next. One release will be perfectly fine to install, easy to use, everything works. And the next release along, something happens and suddenly I get some glitches. Now there's 2 versions available. There's Tumbleweed, and there is Tumbleweed, which is the volume release, and then you've got Leap, which is like a 6-monthly release, a bit like Ubuntu's release cycle. Installing OpenSUSE is quite a long-winded affair. It's got quite a lot of steps to it, but then it's built for everyone. It's not just for the desktop user, so there's quite a lot of involved in installing OpenSUSE. Package management, it's okay. You can get Flatpak installed and set up on it. For such a mature distribution, there's still problems with it, and I can't quite recommend it for the everyday Linux user, because I know at some point a problem is going to arise, and the everyday Linux user needs stability in their lives. They don't want to be fiddling with their computer all the time and having to make tweaks because something broke that wasn't broken before. So OpenSUSE, you can give it a go, but for me, it's not my favourite at all. So number 10 on the list, so in the top 10, Nabara is a Fedora-based distribution. It originates from the United States. Is the GNOME or KDE desktop environments. But essentially Nabara is to Fedora what Linux Mint is to Ubuntu. So if you want a Fedora-based distribution with all the bells and whistles on top, then install Nabara, and it works. It's good. There's a reason it's in the top 10. It's a good, decent, stable distribution. Would I use it over KDE Neon? Maybe, maybe not. It is highly usable. I really enjoyed using it. Installation is okay, and in fact, if you want to install Fedora, but if you don't want to use the really bad Fedora installer, then Nabara is perfect, because you get Fedora without having to. The installer for Fedora is possibly the worst installer I've ever used in my entire life. It is shocking. So the fact that Nabara makes it easy to get a Fedora installation is a good thing. I can highly recommend Nabara as an everyday Linux user distribution. Would I install it over KDE Neon? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I think it's a personal choice. Try them both out, see which one you like the best. But yes, Nabara there's a reason it's going up and up and up, and why it's gaining popularity. It gives you Fedora, but it's Fedora Plus. It's better than just Fedora. Number 9 in the list is Pop! OS. Now, Pop! OS is based on Ubuntu. It originates from the USA again, and it uses the GNOME desktop, but it's a customized GNOME experience. And this is one of the 2 distributions that I highly recommend for any everyday Linux user. It's really easy to install. The hardware support is phenomenal. Really easy to install packages, and it's really one of the best distributions you can use as the everyday Linux user. If you don't want to tinker with your desktop too much, you just want to use your computer, then Pop! OS is absolutely brilliant as a Linux distribution. I couldn't recommend it more. It is definitely one of the few that I would highly recommend, and I do highly recommend Pop! OS. Obviously, because it's GNOME based, it may be a bit heavier to use than some other distributions, so you're going to need 4 GB and above of RAM and a fairly decent spec CPU, etc. But try it out, you won't regret it. It's really easy to install software, really easy to use. So yeah. Number 8 on the list is Zorin. Now Zorin's been around quite a long time. It's based off Ubuntu, originates from Ireland, and the selling point for Zorin is it gives a look and feel similar to Windows. And it's got this theme switcher, so you can make it look like different versions of Windows or Mac OS. There is a paid for version which gives you a little bit more stuff than the base Zorin, but you don't have to buy the add-ons. You can use the Zorin base and it is still highly usable. It makes it easy to run Windows applications if you want to use a game maybe, or a bit of software that comes with Windows that won't work on Linux. Then the big point of Zorin is that it integrates well with things like Play on Linux and Wine and things like that. So it's really easy to install, really easy to use, based on Ubuntu. Therefore, the hardware support is great, and yeah, Zorin is definitely good for the everyday Linux user, and you should give it a go. It's definitely worth trying out. Number 7 on the list is Fedora. Fedora is a base distribution. Well, I say it's based, it originates off Red Hat, of course, but it is what I call a base distribution. It's a distribution that other distributions base themselves off quite heavily. Nobara being one of those, and to be honest, if I was the everyday Linux user, I wouldn't even consider installing Fedora because the installer is shockingly bad, and I still can't believe they haven't got rid of it after all these years. It was bad when they first released it, it's bad now, and I can't recommend if you were trying to dual boot Fedora or Windows, I guarantee if I gave 10 people the chance of dual booting Fedora Windows with a perfectly acceptable guide showing how to do it, 8 out of the 10 would fail and accidentally wipe their Windows. It's that bad. The actual partitioning is guesswork. So yeah, if I wanted to use Fedora, because Fedora itself is fine as a base distribution, it comes with all the package management and all the other stuff on top. If I wanted to use Fedora, I would actually install Nobara, because Nobara is better than Fedora as a usability experience for the everyday Linux user. So Fedora is good as a distribution, but use Nobara because it's Fedora Plus. Number 6, it's everyone's favourite, is Ubuntu. This came out a long time ago. I think it was 2004 that it came out. It's based on Debian, originates from the Isle of Man, and if you haven't heard of Ubuntu, then how did you hear of Linux in the first place? Because Ubuntu is so heavily linked with Linux. Installation, really easy. It's the installer that a lot of installers base themselves off. In fact, the installers even got better in the past year with 23.10. So for installing Ubuntu, you will have no problems whatsoever. Hardware support is phenomenal. It's the best hardware support you're going to get out of any distribution. The package management is the Marmite moment because it uses snap packages, and a lot of the system's based on snap packages, so it's no longer using apt as the default. In most cases, a snap is the default package management, and this is the Marmite moment because some people hate snap packages, some people like them, and from my experience in the past year, snap packages are much better than they were before, and they don't slow your system down half as much as they used to. So I'd say they're now on a par with Flatpak, and if you're being pragmatic about it, usability wise, snap packages are great. You install them and you can uninstall them, and they're easy to install and uninstall. You've got no faffing around. You can find the packages you want quite easily. Ubuntu uses the GNOME package manager, but it does it in such a way that it still leaves your favourite applications visible down the left hand side, which is a good thing. And I would say Ubuntu 23.10 when it came out, and I assume it's carried on to 2404. I haven't reviewed 2404 yet. It's coming, but I like to give it a month before we start reviewing latest releases, etc. What I would say is Ubuntu has improved so much in the past year. 2310 was the best Ubuntu distribution for a long time, and for most people, for most everyday Linux users, it's actually a really usable experience. You're going to need better hardware than 4 gigabytes and above RAM is what they recommend. I would say, yeah, you need on the higher end of that, but it is really usable. Really good distribution, comes with a decent set of applications installed by default. You've got the GNOME software center for installing packages. There are loads of snaps available. Everyone who's developing software is probably developing a snap to go with it. So yeah, I do recommend Ubuntu actually for the everyday Linux user. Whether it's my first choice, I don't know, but I know what you're going to get if you're going to install Ubuntu. You've got a lot of support out there. It's a lot easier to get support from people because there's so many other users. So if you found a problem, there's a chance that other people have found the problem, and there's always ChatGPT to help you along as well. So yeah, Ubuntu, very good. Number 5 is Manjaro, and this is an Arch-based distribution. And amongst Arch users, is a bit of Marmite again, because they don't stay completely up to date with Arch. They're always a couple of weeks behind. Basically, they're looking to see, does Arch break before they give you new packages. And it's Manjaro is, for me, the best Arch-based distribution. Now, like I say, it's Marmite. Arch users will maybe disagree, but what I like about Manjaro is it is really easy to install. It's like the Linux Mint for Ubuntu moment again, or the Nabara Fedora. Manjaro is Arch Linux Plus. It's easy to install, easy to use. Hardware support is phenomenal. The package management works. It's really easy to find packages that you need. It's got lots of tooling around it. You're going to install it and you're going to enjoy it, and it's going to work. And it comes with lots of different desktop environments, so you can make it lightweight by installing an XFCE or LXQT or Mate, or you can go full on GNOME and KDE Plasma. So depending on your hardware, depends on which version you're going to install. But yeah, Manjaro, highly recommend it myself. I'm not sure everyone will recommend it, but I do. Number 4 is Debian. Now, Debian, for me, is the distribution that I use. And I've been using Linux for a long time. And the great thing about Debian, I'm going to show you this in the next couple of weeks, is you can get to the perfect everyday Linux user setup within a few hours. So a lot of the distributions I've listed thus far, things like Sparky, and Linux Lite, some of the comments I've made, like, oh, the hardware support doesn't work properly, or it's harder to install packages because Flatpak's not installed. I could show you how quickly it is to use Debian to get to a point where all your hardware works and it's got a decent set of applications installed by default and the ability to install other packages using Flatpaks within a couple of hours. And so Debian is like the Lego of Linux. It gives you the perfect base to build what you want from. Now, it's not for the everyday Linux user who's very starting out with Linux, this is their first time using Linux. But if you've used it for a while and you want to build up your own distribution the way you want it, then Debian is great. Like I say, it's Linux Lego. It's a great tool for learning. If you want to learn how to really use Linux, then Debian is great. Not for the first time user, not necessarily if you just want to install a distribution and have it up and running perfectly first time, but it is my favourite distribution, I have to say. Number 3 is Endeavour OS, and this is another Arch-based distribution, originates from the Netherlands. It uses many different desktops. It's a lot like Manjaro, but it's more pure in terms of Arch. So it's Arch-based, and it keeps up with Arch in terms of package management and stuff like that, and updates. So Endeavour is Arch Plus again, but unlike Manjaro, it doesn't hold back. So if Arch does have problems, then you're going to have them in an Endeavour probably. But I've used Endeavour and it actually worked really, really well. Was it as good as Manjaro? I don't think it quite was. I think Manjaro, for the everyday Linux user, gives a little bit of a easier experience, but it's still really, really good. But if you want to use an Arch-based distribution, Endeavour or Manjaro are one of the two you're going to go for. You could, of course, use Arch itself, but you have to do the work yourself. A bit like using Debian, you have to do the work yourself. Number 2 is Linux Mint, and Linux Mint is the everyday Linux users' dream operating system. It's the one that most people will recommend. If you're a new user to Linux, they'll say, you'll ask the question, I'm new to Linux, which distribution should I install? And I'd say 99 out of 100 people would say Linux Mint. Why? 1, it's easy to install. 2, it's based off Ubuntu. 3, has that Cinnamon desktop, and the Cinnamon desktop is Windows S, and it's actually really easy to navigate anyway, even if it wasn't, like Windows used to look. Hardware support is phenomenal, uses Ubuntu, so the hardware support works. Really easy to install applications. It doesn't use snaps, it uses Flatpaks, so Flatpaks are already available. The package manager works, really easy to install software. Linux Mint is probably the distribution that most people would recommend for the everyday Linux user, me included. It's definitely up there. You should definitely probably try it as your very first distribution if you've never tried Linux before. It's going to be your best starting experience, and it's probably going to make you fall in love with Linux the first time. Really easy to install, really easy to use. It's the best for the everyday Linux user. And that brings us to number 1 in the list, and it's called MX Linux. MX Linux is a Debian-based distribution. It originates from Greece. It's by the same people that come up with Anti-X. So if you think Anti-X was for very lightweight, very older computers, MX Linux is for all other computers. So you can install KDE, you can install XFCE, loads of other desktops as well. There's a Raspberry Pi version which I tried out, which is phenomenal. It works really, really well. It is based on Debian stable branch. If you were installing the perfect Debian-based distribution for the everyday Linux user, then MX Linux have almost nailed it perfectly. They've got good hardware support. They've got good applications installed by default. They've got a good package manager for installing other applications. The only thing I don't particularly like is the bar down the left hand side. I always move it to the bottom, and I'm not quite so sure with the dark theming, but you can change it. MX Linux is the distribution that I use if I just want to get stuff done. So whilst I use my own customized Debian for most things, MX Linux I use for my work in terms of doing software development and stuff like that, purely because it's really easy to use, everything works on it, and I really, really enjoy using MX Linux. Whilst Mint is the one you probably recommend to the everyday Linux user first hand, MX Linux, give it a go. Honestly, give it a go. You'll really like it. It's really lightweight, really easy to use. It'll work on older machines. So yeah, highly recommend it. So to summarise, I'm going to say the distributions I would recommend, the distributions I wouldn't recommend for the everyday Linux user. So the ones I would recommend are Tuxedo, Solus, Vanilla, Garuda, KDE Neon, Nabara, Pop! OS, Zorin, Ubuntu, Manjaro, Endeavour, Mint and MX Linux. They're the ones I would recommend highly for the everyday Linux user. All the others I wouldn't recommend straight away. Some of them I won't recommend at all. So like Kali, NixOS, FreeBSD and even Fedora I wouldn't recommend for the everyday Linux user, because Fedora, the installer has to go. It has to go. And that is the end of the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Linux User.